Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Generation GC podcast. My name is Molly Hudelson and I am your host. This week we're going to be talking about something else from Good Morning Revival, Good Charlotte's 2007 fourth album. And my guest this week is Leah Knight. Last week we talked about We Believe from the Chronicles of Life and Death, and next week we'll be back with an episode about a song from Cardiology. Leah was born and raised in Texas, and she's been a Good Charlotte fan since 2001. GC is the reason that she took up playing guitar, and she's been playing ever since. Leah is also a full-time mom to a sweet 3-year-old girl who is also becoming a GC fan herself, which, by the way, I think is super adorable. You're going to hear a little bit about that in the show. It's great. It's very cute. I love it. And Leah's wish is that the band will continue to tour long enough that she can take her daughter to a show. By the way, y'all, just a friendly reminder, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. If you want Good Charlotte to tour again as much as I do, stay inside as much as you can. And when you do have to go outside, when you have to go to the store, when you have to, I don't know, if you want to get outside and exercise, take a walk or hike where other people are going to be, wear a mask. Wear a mask. There's not really any excuse not to. Other notes, I am trying some slightly new things with how I edit the audio, so thank you for sticking with me. Also, as a heads up, I tend to fidget a lot while I record. I don't always sit super still. I'm very aware of it now, so maybe I can get better. But just as a heads up, you can hear some of the fidgeting going on in this episode. That being said, in the coming episodes, I think the sound is going to start getting a lot better as I'm learning more about things like microphone placement and different techniques to edit. I have not had any training on that, so it's a journey, and thanks for sticking with me. I've mentioned before the petition to demand justice for Breonna Taylor. At the time I'm recording this, it's at 10.7 million signatures, which means it's met the threshold of signatures needed in order to be placed into a queue of issues for the White House and Congress to address. However, it's still important to keep increasing this number of signatures to get this case at the front of the queue, so please sign that petition. I will link it in the show notes. Also, as a reminder, please visit blacklivesmatters.card.co for info on how you can help in the Black Lives Matter anti-police brutality movement. There's information on there on protests as well as how and where to donate money. If you can't donate money, there are videos to watch and playlists to stream where they will donate the streaming revenue, the ad revenue to the cause. I think that is awesome because, we don't always have a whole lot of money, but it's just great to help in any way you can. There's also going to be info there on how to educate yourself and even more petitions to sign. Finally, Generation GC stickers are here. Do you want a sticker? All right, you've got two options. Number one, support the show on Anchor. You're going to go to anchor.fm/generationgcpod and click support. And that just helps me sustain the show and have the right equipment, headphones, microphones, all the extra little doodads that I need. It also helps me do things like print stickers and get them mailed to you guys. And I have some other ideas for little Generation GC giveaways and merch, etc. that I could create for everyone. Number two, you could donate to a charitable organization and just send me a screenshot of that donation. This week, as last week, I'm encouraging anyone to donate to their local food bank. A lot of people are still out of work right now thanks to the pandemic, and the $600 extra a week that people were getting for unemployment has run out. People in all sorts of industries are without work right now, and people who are maybe working a service industry job where they kind of depended on tips, probably making a lot less in tips right now because a lot of people just tend to tip less when they get a takeout or delivery order versus when they eat in a restaurant. Now, any kind of donation works, whether you want to donate food or money to your local food bank, but I will say that from what I understand, if you donate money to the food bank, that's going to go a lot farther in terms of actually providing food to people than your typical food donation. But anything you do helps, it makes a difference. So, you want a sticker, you're going to either support the show on Anchor or make a donation to your local food bank. And then you're going to send me a screenshot of that support or donation, as well as your mailing address. You can DM me on Twitter or Instagram at GenerationGCPod, P-O-D, or send me an email, generationgcpod@gmail.com, and I will make sure you get some stickers. I'll also occasionally tweet or post on the Instagram story about other ways you can get stickers, whether that's other good deeds to do or ways to help spread the word about the show. So make sure you are following and just keeping up with what we post. Sometimes I post other music I'm listening to. Sometimes I just want to know what you guys are up to, what you're into. I think it's fun. I'm definitely more active on Twitter than Instagram, but trying to be more active at least on the Instagram stories. And maybe I will do an Instagram live again. Let me know if you would want to see that. That's about all for the intro. Thanks for tuning in on to episode 20.
So, something else. This song is track 11 on Good Morning Revival. Mm-hmm. Track 10 is Beautiful Place. And then track 12 is Broken Hearts Parade. And so as we're recording this, tomorrow we have an episode going up about Keep Your Hands Off My Girl, which is a fantastic song, but it's a very, like, jaded and cynical song. And that kind of jaded and bitter and just very frustrated with the fakeness, that's a big theme throughout this album. But you have two kind of positive songs in a row, which is nice.
Yeah.
You have two positive songs in a row, and then it ends with March On, which is, I think, definitely a positive song. But
definitely.
I was noticing that as I was listening to the album in full, and I was like, wow, you have so many songs that are just like, this is terrible, and everyone sucks, and
You know what's funny? Leading up to this, I today while I was working, I actually went back because I've listened to the album in full so many times that I can't even count. But I was listening to it today, and I was thinking to myself, I was like, as many times as I've heard this album, I've never really truly picked up on the anger until today. I was like, golly, like there's so much angst in there, and I never realized it. I knew that there was some, especially on Young and the Hopeless, because, they were still dealing with their dad and stuff. But
it's like a different anger on this.
It is. It's more of like an anger
jaded.
Towards...
It's jaded. That's like the jaded and cynical. And I think it's like I don't know. I think it's like they've finally reached this point where they've done all the things they were singing about how they wanted to do on the first couple albums, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've done it, and they're part of a world that may or may not want them, and they're just trying to figure out where they fit, and it's like really hard and frustrating.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to explain that.
Yeah, it's an angry album, but it's a great album. It's definitely
it's one of my favorites.
But this is a deep cut. I don't believe they've ever played it live. Not a single. No video, but it has really great storytelling and world painting. Like I'm so clearly imagining in my head like exact situations that are happening,
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we are going to dive more into something else, Leah, but first I want to help our guests get to know you and more about your background and your love of Good Charlotte.
Okay.
So, Leah, can you tell me, when did you first hear Good Charlotte, and what were your first thoughts on them? I ask everyone, that's like the first question I ask everyone.
Okay, so the first time I heard Good Charlotte was the summer, I'm going to say, of 2002. I was 11 going on 12.
Okay, so we're about the same age. You're a little older than me.
Yeah, I think just a couple of years, not by much. But I would go to visit my dad's side of the family for a couple of weeks at a time during the summer. And I remember my aunt was taking my cousin and I to just go grab something for lunch real quick. And my cousin had asked her, and I remember this clearly, she said, can we play that new rock CD that you got? And she was like, yeah, sure. And so she popped it in.
Ooh.
And Little Things started playing. And I had never heard it, but I loved the sound. And so I was like, this is really cool. And I asked my aunt, I said, who is this? She said, this is a band called Good Charlotte. They're fairly new. And I was like, interesting. And so I kind of, that's what we listened to while I was up there. And then whenever I came home, sadly, they kind of fell off the radar for me. Like I didn't continue following them until the next school year, which was 2003, which is when I started 7th grade.
That's when Hopeless was out and they were getting a lot of buzz. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's whenever they started kind of really exploding. And that's when I met my friend Karen, who I distinctly remember we shared a Texas history class that we had, and she came in wearing a Good Charlotte shirt. And I asked her, I was like, who is that? She goes, this is Good Charlotte. And I was like, oh my God. And so we started talking and I mean, we just bonded over it, and she reintroduced me to them. And, we blasted the first 2 albums together. And basically from like 7th grade all the way to, the high school, we were our own little Benji and Joel duo, because, we were the only 2 people that we knew that liked Good Charlotte. And in fact, we went to our first Good Charlotte concert together.
I love that. So I do want to hear more about that first concert, but I'm curious, like, what kind of music did people at your school listen to? Because like I said, we're kind of about the same age. I came from New Jersey, you're from Texas. And in like 6th, 7th grade, like middle school, I mean, people listened to Good Charlotte, but even then it was kind of like, Good Charlotte's not cool. And you would have this weird split between people who liked, real punk and real rock, whatever that is, to like 7th graders, and people who, listen to rap or they listen to pop or whatever.
Yeah. And I think that's, I remember that being very prevalent in my middle school, because we, I don't want to necessarily say that we were outcasted because we listened to them, but we were known as the girls that liked Good Charlotte, which was kind of like a weird label to have, but I didn't mind. Yeah. I was like, I love them. I'm not ashamed of it. But the kids at my school, because being in Texas, and this is going to sound incredibly cliche, with Texas country, it was a big thing. And then of course you had your, hip hop group, but I remember Texas country being very like just a major genre that came out of middle school for my knowledge.
So was it like would people be listening to like specifically country acts that were also from Texas, or like any country music was popular?
Any country music was popular. I think, and I can never really understood why they classified it as Texas country and then just your regular country. I mean, to me, it sounds exactly the same, but I'm not fluent in country music. So I mean, someone might sit me down and say, this is Texas country, this is regular country. Oh, I can tell the difference.
I know a small number of country artists. Again, I'm from New Jersey, right? Country is not that huge here. I've been to a few country shows and I've always had a great time, but I've always been curious about that side of the industry, just because I know that, different kind of sects of the music industry sometimes do operate very differently. The way that a rock publicist works versus how an EDM publicist or a country publicist, I mean, the way that they do their jobs is not going to be identical. So, and I've always been curious about country because I'm getting sidetracked, but I feel like country, not so much Good Charlotte, but country and like the Wonder Years style pop punk actually kind of have a lot in common in terms of the like loving your hometown and, this kind of like naive outlook on romance. I don't know. I could like do a whole essay or a whole podcast comparing, pop punk bands to country artists.
I think that's a great comparison, because I mean, I never really sat down and compared the two, but sitting here thinking about, the bands that I know that are pop punk versus the country music that I know, I can definitely see the similarities in that.
Right. And, there's the storytelling and the, some certain stereotypes, but I I argue that there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Leah, talk to me about this first Good Charlotte concert that you went to. What tour was it?
It was the Young and the Hopeless tour.
Okay.
I actually asked Karen yesterday if she remembered who the opening act was, because I think it was either Eve Six or Goldfinger. I can't remember who it was, but because I don't remember a whole lot of their set, because I mean, to be completely honest, I was there for Good Charlotte. I didn't really pay attention. Yeah. So it was me, my friend Karen, and another friend of ours, Emily, who she liked Good Charlotte, but not as much as Karen and I, but she wanted to tag along. So the three of us, and the three of us went, and my mom took us because, believe it or not, when I got into Good Charlotte, I showed my mom Good Charlotte, and she fell in love too. So whenever she found out that she loves them to this day too.
Oh my God.
So when I told her I was doing this, she got super excited, and she was like, "Do they have new music out?" And so I got to sit down and show her all the stuff that they put out, because she's older, she hasn't kept up with a whole lot of stuff.
Sure, yeah.
That was fun. But we went with my mom. It was the Young and the Hopeless tour, and they were playing at the time, it was Nokia Theater at Grand Prairie, which is now known as Verizon.
Okay.
And it was, truthfully, that was my very first concert ever. I had never gone to a concert before that. So for that to be my first, I could not have asked for a better show, because they were great. And I was actually talking to Karen about this the other day, because, I was telling her I was doing this, and we were laughing about it, because we both have this memory so where we were standing, we were not, close to the pit, because we were young. We didn't need to be close to the pit at the time.
I was scared of mosh pits when I was that age.
I mean, I wasn't scared.
No, I was so scared.
I think I just had this, I didn't want to be, I don't know. I just didn't want to be overwhelmed by the amount of people.
Fair, yeah.
But where we were standing, there was this railing that we were leaning on and kind of dancing on or whatever. And during Lifestyles of the Rich and the Famous, we all got the great idea that during the pre-chorus, whenever it says "they would fall," we would lean over the rail and pretend to fall.
Oh no.
And we did it so many times that we actually got Benji's attention, because he pointed and laughed at us.
But probably you thought that was the greatest thing ever. Oh my God, Benji noticed us.
No, it was hilarious, because we didn't even know he saw us until the last one, when we flipped it back up, and we all three looked at him, and we just started laughing, because he was pointing at us, and he was laughing while he was trying to play.
God.
And I was like, that is awesome. Oh my God. That was the best. That memory, and then the other memory that I have of that concert was, I don't remember what song they were getting ready to play, but Benji was going on a tirade about how something about love. He was said something along the lines of "you women don't know what love is," blah 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 blah. He was just being, he was just being a butt. And the three of us literally at the same time yelled, "We love you, Benji!" And he goes, "Okay." And then he goes, "Okay, maybe you do."
Oh my God.
I know, it's hilarious to sit and think back on, but that was truly one of my favorites. And then we saw them again whenever it was the Chronicles of Life and Death tour. And I remember having a slight panic attack on that one, because Joel ran into the crowd, and I was maybe 10 feet from him, and I literally I had a panic attack. I had to I was running toward him to help carry him through the crowd, and when I got about 10 feet away from him, I ran back away, because I was God. I can't do this.
Oh my God. But you survived.
I survived. Yeah, I'm here.
So, Leah, you were telling me when we were messaging before the show, you were telling me that you have been playing guitar for a long time. So
that is right.
What inspired you to pick it up?
So when I got into Good Charlotte and really kind of started learning more, not just about their music, but about the, guys themselves as individuals, one of the things that I learned, which I think is still true, maybe at the time, this is what I found out, but I found out that Benji was self-taught in guitar. He taught himself how to play. And that to me was like, you know what? I want to do that because it would be so fun. It would just be fun to have something like that do, and then play along with them and play loud. And, you know, of course I had dreams of playing with them, but obviously that hasn't happened.
You never know. I mean, I've heard of like Green Day and Blink-182 inviting, you know, people up on stage to jam with them. So you never
That's
know.
what I'm saying. Stranger things have happened. But it was really getting into their music that I decided that I really wanted to pick guitar up and play with them and learn how to play. And to this day, here lately, now that I'm older and have a 3-year-old daughter, I don't have a whole lot of time. During quarantine, I have picked it back up, but not as much as I would like to. So maybe one of these days when she gets older, I can teach her how to play and we can, play together, and then I'll get more time to practice and stuff.
Quarantine has been interesting because on the one hand, I feel like I have all this time, but I also I started this podcast, during quarantine when we had just went into full lockdown in New Jersey. But at the same time, I'm still working 40 hours a week. I still try to take care of myself and such. So I guess the difference being that, without any options for much social interactions, you kind of have more time. So are you playing with bands at all, Leah, or are you just kind of jamming out at home?
No, I just kind of jam out. I did for a long time play with my church band, the church that I went to growing up. I played Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings whenever we would do Bible study and stuff. I did play quite a few times for that. But that's about as far as it went. I just mostly enjoy playing for myself. I find it very cathartic. It's very relaxing, especially now during, being older and having a lot more stress and responsibilities and stuff, just to be able to sit down and pull out either my acoustic, or if nobody's home, my husband's out and kids at school or something, I might pull up the electric and turn it up really loud. I just feel so much better.
I love that. I have barely touched my guitar in a long time, but it is really cathartic to just kind of rock out and just get everything out there.
Get that frustration out. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Are you writing your own songs or mostly doing covers?
I mostly just do covers. I have attempted at writing songs.
Writing songs is hard.
Well, I was going to say, I was not gifted with the writing ability. Yeah. My older sister can write like nobody's business. She is one of the most detailed people I've ever met in her writing. I don't have that. I just have the playing. So she actually not long ago came up with the idea of writing a song and then me putting the music to it. So we're kind of working on that. That's
fun.
A very, very side project. We talked about it maybe 2 months ago, and and she, as far as I know, she's still writing what she wants it to be about. So
I've always been good at the words, and I put out a book last year that was a mix of essays and poems. So the words of song lyrics, I've written lyrics to a handful of songs over the years, but it's the actual playing and the writing of the actual music part that has always kind of tripped me up. I felt like I've never had a grasp on that.
Yeah, that's one skill that I just have not figured out. So, writing is so hard because for me too, I have all of these, emotions that I feel I want to get out, but I don't know how to put them in words. It all just ends up as scribble on a paper. So I don't get anywhere.
Yeah. It's tough. And it's weird that when I put this book out last year, I remember talking about it with some friends, after I had just announced the book and we were kind of celebrating, and they were like, oh, do you have anything about Warped Tour? And do you have anything about Major League? And mentioning things. And I was like, those are all, I have so many significant experiences in my life that I talk about in my book, but there's also so much that I don't, or that I didn't in that book. And it's weird because I'm like, well, did I express everything I wanted to say?
And that was going to be my
so.
question. Like, do you like look back on it and go, man, I wish I would have added this, or I can't believe I forgot about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, so the book is called I Told You I Hated New York. It told, I think ultimately, it did tell the story I wanted it to tell, but it was kind of weird that I'm like, oh, there are other things I totally could have like added. Right. Yeah. But I also wanted, it's like an anthology, and I wanted the same thing as like bands putting together an album, right? Like you could have all these great songs that you write, but if they don't quite fit that album, maybe you don't put it on the album.
Right. Yeah.
So Leah, I have to ask you, what's your favorite Good Charlotte song to play on guitar?
Oh, golly. This is a hard one. I was really...
I had to know it was coming.
I know, I did. I knew it was coming, so I was really sitting down and thinking back to like what was my top one that I really loved. So there's a few that tie for first. So I'll just name my favorite few just right off the bat. So one of my favorite ones to play, even though, and it's really funny because I love to play it when like we're sitting outside with our neighbors and it's like we have a fire pit going and we're talking and relaxing and whatnot. I will get out the guitar and I will play, even though it is probably a very dark song to play. I will play The Day That I Die.
I could see that because I could see that being like a good kind of campfire type song.
And it's fun.
Even though it's incredibly dark.
It's very dark. The lyrics are very dark.
Oh my God, yeah.
But it's fun too because my husband, who he loves Good Charlotte too, not as much as me, but he likes them. He knows the song, so we'll kind of trade off as to who does what vocal. Like I'll do Benji's lead and he'll do Joel's, backing, or I'll do Joel's backing, he'll do Benji's lead, just depending on kind of how we start. So that's fun to do. So I like doing that one. The other one that I really enjoy playing because it helps me on days whenever I'm feeling just incredibly run down. Motivation Proclamation.
Great one.
That is probably one of my all-time favorites to play. It's a little bit challenging. Benji's solo is very challenging in that, and even to this day, I still struggle with it. But it's close to being perfected. And the top two, I think, that tie for first. Dance Floor Anthem.
Oh, okay.
A lot of fun to play. Top three for first. Sorry. Dance Floor Anthem. Misery is a lot of fun to play, but my all-time favorite one that I love to play, all-time favorite one, The Click.
Oh, okay.
The Click is fun to play because of the way that you have to, play the strings against the fret. You have to slide it down the net. Oh my gosh, it's so fun. Whenever I learned how to play that, I was ecstatic, and that was all I played for like months.
I'm impressed. I could do... You're definitely a more advanced guitar player than I have ever been, by the way. I could do Seasons, which is like...
Oh, yeah, Seasons. Mm-hmm.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I liked playing that one. So, Leah, I just have one more question before we dive into something else. But I know that you have a young daughter, and you were telling me she is becoming a Good Charlotte fan herself. So, does she have a favorite Good Charlotte song?
Not yet. She's very good about trying to mouth words and stuff. So she's 3, so her speech is still developing. She's, she speaks really well, but she's still, as far as music and stuff goes, she's still learning. One that she, for some reason, has kind of really taken a grip to, a liking to, and it was just playing while I was driving her home from school one day. We were on our way home. And it was Say Anything. And I was just, I was just kind of like, sitting there singing and, thinking back and whatnot. And I look in the rearview mirror and I see her just kind of like bobbing her head. And so when the song ended, she said, "Mommy, can we play that again?" And I was like, "Sure." So we started it over, and she, like, we probably played it like maybe 15 times in a row, which I don't care. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
and by the time we were, close to being home, and it was maybe like the 15th time that we had played it, she was trying to sing the words. So for whatever reason,
I love
that one caught on to her. So I'm just hoping that she continues to, develop in that. And I continue to play Good Charlotte in the car. So she's always around it. So.
Love it. I love that. Leah, so you had reached out to me on Twitter, I think back in May, just telling me, about your history with Good Charlotte and all, which dates back, as you were saying, quite a long time. Mm-hmm. And you gave me a handful of songs that meant a lot to you, one of them being Something Else. So what sticks out to you about Something Else? What made you want to talk about this song?
So this song, to me, has always kind of had a personal meaning.
Okay.
And I say that because, but to take the lyrics in their literal term, like Joel speaking about, how he came from nowhere and the girl that he's either with or talking to, has been to Rome, basically all over the world.
Yeah.
To me, that's a very personal experience because I, grew up in, I don't want to call it a little town, but it was definitely not as big as it is today. But when I met my husband, he grew up in a bigger town in Texas that everybody knows. And so that song to me has always kind of been like, it's funny because he grew up in a area that's like pretty well known and well off and stuff. Here I am in this little tiny town, never gone anywhere, have never gone outside of the country. He's been on cruises. Wow. And, my dad, I love my dad. He's a hard worker. He's a contractor. So he does the hard labor, physical labor for a living. His dad was always in finances. So his dad, was in corporate world and stuff. So to me, that song has always had just almost like a personal storytelling of the differences between us, but also how, like him, for example, especially now that we have our daughter, he has asked my dad several times to show him how to do things on his own because he never had that. Every time they had to fix something, they would call someone to come do it, whereas my dad knows how to do it. So he's asked my dad, can you show me how to do this? So, and I'm over here, just kind of like, I wonder what it's like to, travel here and, because he's been there and I haven't. And, it's, I don't know. It's always just had a very personal meaning to me just because of how different we grew up and how we both wanted to experience things differently. We both really wanted something else for ourselves. He wanted more, humble, just, and humble's not the right word, but he wanted to learn more and how to do more for himself and on his own. And I wanted to, kind of just explore different things, see different things. And the one line in that song that really hits personal for me is when he says, when Joel says she drags me to parties where people ask me where I went to college when she knows damn well I barely finished school. That's very personal because when we first met and, I told him, so I graduated high school early just because I had finished my credits somehow, but I barely made it onto graduation because I could not pass our math test assessment. I suck at math, still do to this day. So I could not pass that until I finally did, and I finally got to graduate. And from then I decided to just kind of go into the, working world and start working my way up because I just knew school wasn't for me, whereas he went to school. So whenever we first started dating and I met his family, right off the bat, I got questions about, oh, did you go to college? What college did you go to? And I'm just looking at him like, I barely graduated high school. Like,
right, like here's all these people, here's all these people you just met asking these questions that like, to them are innocent questions and normal, typical questions.
Right.
But that, might inadvertently hit on, a soft spot.
Right. Yeah.
I think, Leah, hearing your story about, meeting your husband and all was really fun for me, because I think it, first of all, in terms of relating to this song, I think it shows just how great the storytelling on this song is, and the sort of world painting, as I was saying, that even if, your life and experiences don't line up with exactly how it's played in the song, it lines up a lot, and there's a lot that you can pull from and that you can relate to.
Right.
So let's talk about what the song means, and I think I would love to hear your perspective on, like, what do you think the band was specifically trying to get at with this song?
Well, going back and listening to it after, talking to you a little bit about it, I really, so I have a tendency to relate songs, like listen to songs and listen to words and somehow make them relate to what I'm going through.
Sure, yeah.
That's just how I process music. I've always said that music helps me heal during my frustration, and if I'm angry, if I'm sad, I will put on a song that relates to the mood that I'm in. And even though it might make me worse for a little bit, I always feel better afterwards. So, but listening back to it, I really have to agree with the fact that it sounds to me like they're saying, the grass is always greener over there, or it seems greener anyway. Like they have all these nice things. I don't. So, I want what they have, but who knows? They maybe want what I have. Maybe they don't want all those things.
Yeah. I think that grass is always greener, and that's something I had, put in my notes, but that feeling of a grass is always greener is something I really got. I don't know, because I feel like this song, on the one hand, it's about, in some way, opposites attract, because he's talking about dating someone that's on the surface very different from him, which, in reality is the type of people that, Benji and Joel, they're both now married to, famous, blonde, gorgeous and talented women, but women who, like, if you look at them on the outside, are super different from them, right? And who come from very different backgrounds. So it's like, it's that opposites attract thing, but also that kind of grass is always greener thing,
Yeah.
I think let's dive into that. Just the idea of grass is always greener. Because I think, I don't know. I think what people, so my degree is in psychology. I have a bachelor's in psychology, so I'm not like an expert. I have a bachelor's in psych, graduated like several years ago. I don't have any professional degrees, right? I don't work in psychology, but I find it interesting. So I think about psychology stuff a lot. And I think that, the type of things people look for tend to be the ones they're missing.
Yes.
And in the case of some, if you grew up without a lot of money, I think that's like an obvious one, right? If you grew up and you didn't have a lot of money, maybe not probably, but if you grew up and you didn't have a lot of money, you might be very motivated to go into a career where you're going to be set financially. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
But if you come from the, upper class, you might be striving harder for wanting to build a family,
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think something I've been thinking about with regards to this whole, like, the idea of the grass is always greener is that, like, you kind of, I feel like it's a tug of war almost between wanting to improve yourself and change a situation that you don't like, but also trying to, like, have self-love and kind of, like, accepting who you are and where you are. Have you ever felt that?
I have, and that's something that I actually wrote down also.
Oh, really?
Because I sat down last night and just kind of typed out that, the things that I kind of felt about the song. And one of the things that I put to was that it looks, even though it looks like sometimes something might be better somewhere else, deep down you're always going to want something, something else even more. So you're going to be, to me, it almost has a message of, yes, we all want something else, but what's going to happen is you're going to end up chasing circles for something that is either right in front of you or you'll never have.
Yeah. I mean, something that I just find is a great example to share in terms of that is like, so I've been working full-time in music for a couple of years now. I have a marketing role in video promotion, which is a really cool niche that a lot of people don't even know like exists. But
that's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But a couple of years back, I had a job offer to work as a booking agent assistant. And it would have been really, really cool. And it would have been like an amazing opportunity in a lot of ways. But I turned it down because like in my gut, I was just like, it's not right.
Yeah.
And I think now, and I'm like, oh, now with the current situation, I'm like, wow, I'm really glad I didn't jump on that.
I was going to say, yeah, that's definitely one of those things. Yeah.
And I think about, the company that I won't name, but the company that like when I was 18, this was like my dream beyond dream to work for this company. It turns out they are not a great place to work. And I'm glad that didn't work out either,
Yeah.
But it's like, at the same time, I have a job that I like, but I want to move up in the company, but I also want to do a good job at where I am. And I will admit that's like kind of one of my fatal flaws is like, sometimes I get so excited about the idea of like moving up or advancing that it's like a really, really conscious thing for me to focus on where I am right here, right now. But I instead of getting caught up in like the big picture.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's something that I probably would say that was probably a fatal flaw of mine too. Cause I was in a similar situation not long ago. And I was working for a company for 6 years and then I got offered a position that allowed me to move up and I could advance my skills. Mm-hmm. But they, it ended up not being what I thought it was going to be. So for the amount of time that I was there in that position up until the point when I left and I'm at the job I'm at now, I remember sitting there thinking, golly, I should have just stayed where I was at because I liked what I did, but I was so excited about the prospect of moving up and learning more that I didn't, I just jumped on it because I thought it was the best thing to do. And lo and behold, it definitely was not. So
it's hard. And I mean, I will say that like doing, and, before we did this after work, I journaled and I did yoga and both of those, especially doing yoga, pretty much every day have really helped me like focus on like the mindfulness and like, what am I feeling right here, right now? But it's still, and I think especially, and I think it's a good thing that women are often like encouraged to jump on opportunities, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes, sometimes, and it doesn't mean it was a mistake. If something doesn't work out, it doesn't mean it was a mistake.
It's a learning experience.
It's a learning experience.
I like to think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Leah, one other thing I want to talk about is the idea of opposites attract. So before we dive into this more, do you believe that opposites attract? Like in terms of, dating and love, do you believe that opposites attract?
I believe they do in certain instances. It has to be, I know that's very, I don't know, just weird to say, but I feel like, yes, they do, but it depends on what the attraction is. You know what I mean?
Like whether the attraction is like someone's like sexually attracted to someone versus they feel like an actual bond?
No, I mean in the sense that like, maybe, for instance, we have a friend of ours who lives down the street from us. He is very conservative.
Okay.
She is very liberal.
Okay.
They make such a cute couple. And I'm like, that's crazy to me, because you guys are on complete opposites of the spectrum, yet, you know, like that, if you want to talk about opposites attract, like that's what it is to me. Like, yeah. They find other things that they find attractive in each other, even though they had that one major difference.
Yeah. I like most of the guys I've dated, and certainly, you know, the people I've like had the strongest feelings for and such, right, have been relatively similar to me in like the surface level things. And like, oh, you know, he also works in music and, you know, likes this random TV show. Like, people that on the surface, I think anyone that knew me would be like, oh yeah, of course, you know, right? Mm-hmm. But I've always joked that like probably the guy I end up marrying will be like a Guido from Staten Island who works in finance, or like a lax bro, a lacrosse player who, you know, is really involved in his fraternity's alumni. It's like someone who has these like super different things from me. And
oh my gosh, like, that's funny.
I say it as a joke, but I feel like you can, and I think, you know, without, and I don't know Nicole Richie or Cameron Diaz, and I don't know Benji or Joel Madden personally, right? But without knowing any of them personally, I feel like that's an example of probably two people who maybe came from very different backgrounds, but who shared core values and shared what they wanted. And that's why, like, I feel like Tinder and such have made that kind of hard, because like I was on Tinder earlier today and I was like, you know, and I'm like, okay, like maybe that's someone I could be into, but like, he looks like he plays lacrosse and he's like a Guido, you know, and I'm like, what? And it's like, what matters? What doesn't, you know? I feel like, I don't know. It's, I think finding the right person is clearly a learning process. I'm still working on, but
yeah, and it definitely is, because you know, and unfortunately sometimes you learn the hard way that you know, even though, because like we have a friend of ours that we love dearly, he got married about 5 years ago, and they had a kid, and then like 2 years later they're divorced.
Oh jeez.
And it's because when it came to parenting, they had two totally different styles, where she wanted things, you know, to be done a certain way, and he wanted to help, but like, because he didn't do them the exact way that she wanted him to, she wouldn't let him do it. So,
and that's like a thing you don't necessarily pick up on in, you know, when you're just dating someone, right? Like you probably wouldn't even realize it till you're in that experience where you are parenting with someone.
Right.
So, Leah, do you have any like specific memories or stories that you want to share about something else?
I mean, I have, you know, just when it comes to memories of Good Charlotte, I just have, oh, you know what I did want to tell you, and I wish so bad I had a picture of it somewhere. I know I sent you a picture of me holding my guitar when I was like 13. Yeah, I was 13. That's whenever I really started playing. I wish I had a picture of it, but when I really got into Good Charlotte and then really started learning about all of the bands within that pop punk genre, you know, Mess, Simple Plan,
Mess,
MXPX. Oh my God, I love
my first mosh pit was at a Mess show.
Tony Lovato will always be just a heartthrob for me. That dude, like, he did it for me when I was 13, and he still does it for me now.
Yeah, I was 14 when I saw them on their farewell tour, and like my dad had dropped off me and my friends, but then he like came back, and I guess he like got a ticket, like someone like gave him a ticket, so he like ended up being there just for Mest's set.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and Tony was not wearing a shirt, so like 14-year-old me is like in the mosh pit for the first time and is like freaking out, like having a great time. Someone's like yanking on my ponytail and someone falls on my head and I'm like, fuck yeah. And you know, Tony Lovato being Tony Lovato in 2006 is like talking about drinking and having fun and such. And then on the whole drive home, my dad is just like, that guy, looking at that guy and like he, you know, how he looks, because he had a decent looking body, right? My dad's like, you know, looking at that guy, he does not drink nearly as much as he says he does.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's awesome though that your dad got a ticket and went and experienced that with you. That's so cool.
Yeah, so that as you mentioned Mest, that was, I had to give my little Mest story there.
Oh my, Mest will always have a special place in my heart, always.
Oh yes.
But whenever I really got into, you know, that pop punk genre, and Karen actually, and if Karen, if you listen to this, I'm just gonna tell you, you were my inspiration. I think you know that. She had like, oh, I admired her room so much. Every like magazine clipping.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, that was me. That was me too. Yep.
And so I started doing that in my room. So my room was lime green, and there was not a single space of wall that you could see that was green, because it was just covered with Good Charlotte stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I wish so bad, looking back on it, that I would have just taken pictures of my room, because that was like a favorite time for me. But
I took pictures of my room, and like I know there's a set of pictures that I took when I was like 15, but I wish I had taken, but I filled up my room when I was like 15 or something, and I think by that point I didn't add too much after, because literally every service was filled up. But I do wish I had taken pictures like right before I took all the stuff down and moved out.
Yeah, that's one thing that I don't necessarily regret doing. I just wish I would have done it, was taking pictures of that, because that's such a fond memory growing up and having that all throughout middle school and high school. And I miss it. So,
yeah, I have, you know, several posters hung up now and a couple of flags. And then like my living room and office area are mostly like photos that I've taken and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Leah, we have 2 fan-made videos. Did you get to watch these?
I pulled them up. I know I've seen one of them, and it's just like a compilation of their shows, right?
Yeah, well, we have 2 fan videos that are very different. One is from Cause I Am Bored on YouTube, and listeners, I'll put both of these in the show notes. I always put like a ton of info in the show notes. User Cause I Am Bored did one that like they cut together shots of like Good Charlotte shows and performances with like the most stereotypical rich famous celebutante girl shots. So kind of, you know, trying to show, I guess, sort of the vibe of this song, but it's a fan made kind of collage montage. So that one's fun. And then the other one by Chiantos 37, it's like a lyric video, but done as like a very literal slideshow, like showing pictures that relate to each line of the lyrics.
Oh my gosh, I had to sit and watch that one.
Yeah, that one's really good. And I just had to note, I think it's the chorus when they say, we all want something we can't have. They show a picture of George Bush and like an oil rig.
Oh,
and I was like, oh wow, what a little, true, but like what a little minor, like the whole thing, like this video is just very like, you know, someone got bored and very like literal. It's pretty funny, right? And there's that like surprise political discourse. But it's something that like, you know, it's the kind of thing that like if I was the age when this album came out, that's like exactly the type of thing
Oh yeah.
that I would have made when I was like 16 or something, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I want to talk about some press about this song, and being it's always interesting when I'm like reading up on the songs, because obviously the hit singles and the fan favorites are going to have tons of interviews that ask about them and reviews that mention them, but there's always like a couple for the deep cuts too. So Rock Sound had a great article where they talked about Good Charlotte's hidden gems, which is great because the whole premise of this article was like some underappreciated Good Charlotte songs. And I'm like, yes, thank you, Rock Sound.
Which they have so many.
Yeah. And this album and Cardiology being two great examples of albums that have like so many just
there's so
really,
many
like,
songs
hidden
on Cardiology.
And this album and Cardiology just having so many incredible songs that like never got the I think love and recognition. But
yeah, absolutely.
Rock Sound said about something else. Oh, Good Morning Revival, you were wonderful. This slab of perfectly simmering storytelling was just one reason why Good Charlotte's fourth album was so great.
I agree with that 100%. That's perfectly stated.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Pop Matters called it oddly charming. So Pop Matters wrote a review that was not super positive overall, like not very positive at all. But they did say that buried late in the album, long after we've given up hope, lies the oddly charming Something Else, a little tune that nicely mimics the ebullient pop of Fountains of Wayne, from the call and response vocals to the undulating Moog synth. So
I can see the Fountains of Wayne similarity.
Yeah. So like I read this review and like I'm, as I get ready for the show, like I'm just kind of like listening to the album and just kind of like Googling and like pulling quotes, right? And I read this and I'm like, well, like I have to like put this in my notes because that's really interesting and that's not something I would have thought of.
Yeah.
Now that I'm like seeing it and I've spent a little time like thinking about the song like really detailed, I'm like, I guess I could kind of see it, but I honestly like really don't know Fountains of Wayne very much beyond Stacy's mom.
Yeah, that's fair because I don't either.
But maybe I need to go listen to some more Fountains of Wayne now.
I was going to say that's going to be one that I'm going to have to look up too.
Yeah. So listeners, please tell me your favorite Fountains of Wayne song that's not Stacy's mom, because we know that one. I also, as they talk about the call and response vocals, Leah, I cannot be the only person who's thought of this, but like I would love to see this as a duet with like a male and female vocal, because I feel like this song would take so well to that like storytelling and the back and forth, and maybe it's something that's set as a part of a musical, or maybe it's in a video or there's a performance, but I feel like this would go really well as a duet.
And what's funny that you say that, because I have always envisioned it being sung as a duet, because just like you said, because of the different storytelling. But on the flip side of that too, whenever I would listen to the song, I would actually change the pronouns in the song for me to kind of relate to, my husband and I, he's a diamond, I'm a stone. I come from nowhere. He's been to Rome. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love that. One review. So, obviously I pull a lot of reviews and content from kind of the major music websites as I find them, but I have found it really interesting to seeing like the sort of fringe websites, whether that's the more fan-based sites or, user-based reviews, or whether it's something that's like a real niche kind of website. But I found one called Plugged In, which is a publication by Focus on the Family, which is a Christian, very, at least socially conservative organization. and they will like review media and basically say like, is this, you know, acceptable? Is it, you know, in line with, I guess, what Christian beliefs are? But they had a really interesting review on this album, and they had divided it into pro-social content, like what's good, you know, what is in line with, I guess, you know, certain beliefs, and then objectionable content, which is, you know, blasphemous material. They actually had quite a lot of good things to say about the themes of this album, and you know, Benji and Joel are Christian. They believe in God. They, you know, they're religious guys. But they said about this song, they said that something else suggests that people from vastly different backgrounds can still share love, and that contentment is the true, somewhat elusive prize. Which is like a great statement, and I think that's such a great, you know, even if we take away the obviously very religious, you know, slant of that website. I remember many years ago reading an interview with someone from Simple Plan, actually, and they all talked about how success is when you're happy, right?
Yeah.
And I think that points to kind of this song too, right? Like, not that you're ever going to stop wondering what else might be out there, but that you're going to be able to feel happy with where you are.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I would think that's a great way to explain that.
Some food for thought, on a very different angle. So there was an angle, and I don't want this show to be a gossip show. That's not what it's about. But there was an article on citypages.com that compared Good Morning Revival with Hilary Duff's album Dignity that came out around the same time, both not long after Joel and Hilary had broken up. And it was the kind of thing that I was like, oh, it's kind of interesting to read, but like, I don't know, it doesn't really feel fair to like speculate about someone's relationship, so I'm not gonna like read from that article. But
yeah,
it I don't know. It's, you know, being a writer, obviously I love digging into songs and what they're about and what might the story be, but that I don't know, that whole article felt very like trying to pull answers and make sense out of something that you might not have.
Kind of like trying to pull something out of nothing, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because I never, because reading, you know, I did look up some of these articles that you sent me, and that was one that I read. And as I was reading it, I was like, I do not understand how they can sit there and say, you know, write this stuff out, because that I do not get any of that from that song at all. But
yeah,
it also could be because I'm interpreting it differently. Everybody interprets it differently. So
I think there's also, I don't know, like I've not really being a songwriter, but having written poetry and having written a lot about my feelings, you know, in this, like in this book that I just put out. And I don't know, I think, at least in my experiences, like I've written plenty of things, you know, here's an example, is like, I wrote a poem, and this was the title of my book, called I Told You I Hated New York, right? And that poem encapsulates how I felt at a very specific moment in time.
Right.
And like the way that I feel now is not necessarily how I felt in November 2018 when I wrote that poem. But someone sees that out in the world, and they may, you know, they probably assume that like, oh, you know, she published this poem, so she still feels this way, right?
Right.
Or, oh, she published this poem, so that's it. There's no more nuance.
Right.
No. There's a lot of nuance to me telling someone that I hated New York, right? And all the feelings that came after that. There's a lot of nuance there.
Right.
But that might not be obvious to the listener, even if that listener were to pore over every other poem in that book,
Yeah.
So I don't know. Look, that article exists. If anyone listening wants to find it, go ahead. But we're not going to do a piece by piece analysis of, the band members versus their exes.
Right.
Leah, this has been really fun.
I've enjoyed this. This is really, I love this.
This has been really cool. So, Good Morning Revival is 13 years old now, which
Golly.
is 13 years old.
So old.
13 years old, like ridiculous. But,
I was 12. I was going on 12 when I first heard about them, and I'll be 30 this year.
Yeah, I was 11, almost 12 when I first heard about them, and I'll be 29 in August.
Oh man.
So like both of us have listened to Good Charlotte for well over half our lives.
I was gonna say well over half our lives. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Leah, how has this song specifically held up for you over time? I mean, you've talked about a lot about how, this relates to a lot of how you feel with your husband, but I guess maybe I'll flip that question, but like, how did you feel about this song when the album first came out, before you had met your husband?
So when the album, because it came out in 2007, so when it first came out, it was a song that to me just really instantly became one of my favorites over, the rest of the songs, aside from their singles, Dance More Anthem.
Sure, yeah.
Just because of the reason I loved it so much is because I, knew the background that Benji and Joel had growing up, and, how they really went through a rough time as teenagers, and, they worked, their asses off getting to where they were today. So hearing him talk about, this love that he's with now, to me, it was just a great, like you've said, multiple times, it's a great storytelling. It's just, to me, I enjoyed the story that he was telling about, well, this is my background, but this is her, and we got together and it's working okay.
It's such a fun song, the storytelling, and just feeling like he's painting such a good picture, but also like the rhymes feel really clever. She wants to go to restaurants in Beverly Hills where people stare, but I don't care. Right. A lot of really clever little things like that make this song really fun.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So Leah, what has Good Charlotte meant to you over the years, and how has that changed?
So they, to me, whenever I learned about them, basically the second time, I'll say, it was during a period of time that I was going through, as a teenager, just a really rough time, and not, your teenage angsty type of thing. Just some things that were kind of in my environment that I kind of wished weren't. And, it was just a really difficult time growing up for me. They really just, can't even explain it. They just brought me to a sense of understanding. Like, they knew what I was feeling at that point in time. And now listening back, to their older albums, especially Young and Hopeless, because that one to me, it's got some fun songs on there, but it also has, that's Share of Anger as well. One that really sticks with me is Moving On, because that was kind of my theme song throughout my teenage years into my adulthood. And listening back to that now, like, it just brings a smile to my face, because I'm like, I did move on. I made it.
You did.
I'm here. I'm an adult. I'm doing adult things. And, it's so I've stuck with them since I was young. I will stick with them till no pun intended, till the day that I die. And I think if anything, my love for them has not really changed.
Mm-hmm.
It's matured.
Love that.
It's matured with them. And in another good example of that too, Cardiology came out in 2010, and one song that always stuck with me. I'm sorry?
10 years this year.
Oh my God. Yeah. Golly, man.
Yep.
So when that one came out too, one song that really stuck with me on that was Harlow's song, because I loved, one of my favorite things about that was hearing him sing about his daughter. When my daughter was born, and there was a night where she was just crying her head off. She was a few months old, didn't want to eat, had a clean diaper, so I couldn't figure out what it was. I was crying because I was frustrated. I just started immediately singing that song to her, and it calmed her in an instant. And so that to me has always had
that's so
sweet. Special. Yeah. So my love for them has not changed except for the fact that it's matured with them.
I love that. That's such a great story, and that's such a great example of how your love for them has matured just as you've grown as a person and had other life experiences.
Right. Yeah.
So Leah, do you have any last words about something else about Good Charlotte or about yourself?
I just want to say that Something Else will always be just a song that I hold close to my heart. And I do know, I have heard or seen Benji on Twitter talk about the podcast.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, if, Joel, Benji, Paul, Billy, or Dean, if any of you guys hear this, I just want you guys to know I owe a lot to you for your music. And one of my favorite things about you guys is how humble you've stayed during all of the changes over the years. They have never strayed from who they were in the get-go. Even though they were frustrated because, like you said, they were always kind of in a niche. It's like, well, do we belong or do we not?
Yeah.
They always stay true to who they were. And that has always been my number one favorite thing about them. That's why I have loved them. And that's why I have respected them for so many years.
Exactly. And to wrap this up, but that's, completely something that has meant a lot to me too, as like in my own life in so many ways. I feel like I've tried to be my own person, and I've always been my own person, and I'm kind of incapable of like just fitting in to be accepted by other people, even if it might make my life easier. But there can definitely be a frustration within that. And that's something that I've really gravitated towards Good Charlotte, because Leah, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people keep up with you on the internet?
You can follow me on Twitter, Leah_Renee90, and same for Instagram, Leah_Renee90, and just Leah Knight on Facebook if you are just at all interested. But those are the only three that I have.
Perfect. Leah, thank you so much for coming on the show. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to hear me and Leah talk about Something Else from Good Morning Revival. Last week, we talked about We Believe from the Chronicles of Life and Death. And next week, we'll be talking about a song from Cardiology. As a reminder, you can follow Generation GC at Generation GC Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also follow me, Molly, at Hudelson on Twitter and Instagram. And make sure you're subscribed to the show on iTunes. Leave a review, rate it, and make sure to tell a friend about Generation GC. If you've got a friend that loves Good Charlotte, tell them about the show, because word of mouth is awesome. Thank you all so much for tuning in.